we are ready for our last talk before lunch. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on Shady to talk about how we can change the wallet world and make better infrastructure choices to just solve the problems of needing multiple wallets. So without further ado, please welcome him on stage.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Great to see everybody in the audience here. I guess you must not be too hungry. You must have had a really big breakfast. I mean, lunch is just outside waiting for you. Hi, everyone. My name is Shady El Damaty. I'm one of the co-founders at Holonym. And we're building a tech stack for humans called human.tech. So we're at a builder conference today. And what I want to talk about today is something that I think a lot of us are grasping with, trying to understand. And that is, how is autonomous software going to change the world, right? We're having autonomous software do more economic work for us. So what happens when economically productive software begins eating the world? Now, the prediction I want to make here is that within the next 9 months, the wallet as we know it is going to be dead. We're not going to have these point-and-click interfaces. It's going to look like something completely different because the cost for creating software is approaching zero, and the primary user interface, the home page that users might go to for interacting with software, is going to change. So yeah, I'll tell you exactly what I mean about that. But I think it would be good to get an idea of who's in the audience. So who here is actively using AI on a day-to-day basis? Please raise your hand. Okay, yeah, that's like unanimous, except the AV team. I don't think the AV team's using it. But okay, and then who here is experimenting with tools like OpenClaw or Hermes to run agents? Wow, okay, wow, that's like a really big amount. I feel like this number grows every day. I just started actually running my own Hermes agent as well. And it's a paradigm shift. It changes kind of how you think about just interacting with software in general and what your day-to-day looks like. And you tend to forget about things like meals and taking a shower when your agents are always there waiting for you to be their parents. But one of the kind of major challenges if you're experimenting with these types of systems is what do you do with the secrets that you need for your agents to actually behave autonomously? Right? If you want your agent to auto-deploy servers, if you want it to auto-deploy apps and completely own the CI/CD pipeline with you just in the loop when needed, it's a bit of it's tough, right? You have this .env file, you drop the private keys in the .env file, you drop your API access keys, your personal access tokens, and you pray to God that it doesn't get prompt injected or doesn't accidentally leak the .env file. So I don't think I'm alone in this. I would love to know, by a show of hands, who here would actually give an agent your private key for a production use case? One person. I need to talk to you afterwards. I would love to hear exactly what your setup looks like. But yeah, we probably should not be giving AI agents our secrets. And if there are use cases for this, I'd be curious to learn more about them. This is, I think, one of the biggest blockers for many builders and kind of if there is going to be a transformational moment for AI agents in technology, in this next industrial intelligence revolution, we're going to have to figure this out. So I'm gonna put this up front. I think let's start off with what the frame of reference is, and then we'll go through why we're thinking about this design philosophy when it comes to software architecture for autonomous software. We need to move away from this idea of agents or even wallets in general acting as containers for assets or agents having authority. And thinking more of wallets as, they become kind of something different when you think of wallets as containers for capabilities or assets. And agents are basically just receiving this delegated capability, but never any authority, right? They never receive that. So what does that mean? It basically means that because these systems are non-deterministic, right, in nature, it's very important that we have hard guardrails in being able to kind of delimit what sort of behavior they can do. So for example, when it comes to DeFi or when it comes to on-chain stuff, it's about, say, don't spend more than a certain amount in gas. Don't participate in these transactions if, MEV, if MEV-safe routes are not available. Perhaps only sign applications from specific, or sign requests from specific applications, only if they meet, say, so for example, some risk threshold or some list of criteria, right? Say that this application hasn't had an exploit in the last 30 days, then yes, I would like to, then you're allowed to find the best routes, whatever that is. So in all of these cases, what we see is that human approval comes in only when you brush against the guardrails. So the engineer's task then is to really kind of compress capabilities to their minimal attack surface, keeping security in mind. And this is something maybe you can build through iteration as the production use case becomes more mature and you better understand exactly what the environment is that the agent is kind of participating and behaving in. You build these primitives together, and then you can end up with more functional, autonomous flows, right? Where you step in at certain points where it's important perhaps to revise the policy, to perform a specific type of approval, et cetera. So yeah, the sky is kind of the limit when you think this way, and you're not just kind of like recklessly blindly running into, allowing automation to kind of just like, maybe ruin your day. So yeah, I mean, this is, I think like, yeah. So this agent security issue really is a design problem, right? It's a design philosophy problem, and it's coming from security as a first principle. So how do we actually approach secret management in a way that allows for these sorts of guardrails to exist? And how is it even possible for anything to do anything? Like, how is it even possible for an agent to even do anything if it doesn't have access to your .env file? Like, the key has to live somewhere. If it's local, it needs to be read into RAM. So there's been a couple different ways to approach this in the industry, and I think they're all indicative of how people are starting to think about these problems. There's been exploits, right? There was like a DeFi exploit like a couple weeks ago because an agent leaked a private key and a couple $100,000 were stolen. This is only going to increase as things like Claude Atlas are released and more exploits become available. And yes, it's going to be a big problem. So approach number one is YOLO. Give the agent the key. Let's, we just want to experiment, figure these things out, and then perhaps a solution will reveal itself. Maybe agents will just become smarter, and we're along for the ride. Option two is a good option. Option two is you keep the key local. So tools like, for example, IronClaw, written up by Ilya from Near, a really great piece of software that runs a separate container for your secrets and keeps that container shielded from the agent, and that container is running like on localhost, so it's local. Or open wallet standard is another great example where you have some seed phrase. And with that seed phrase, you derive a key on the fly, kind of like BIP32 from Bitcoin. You have like root seed phrase. You can then derive a key on any elliptic curve, any blockchain. You only read it in memory, very temporarily, to sign the transaction, and then you delete it immediately. This is a pretty good approach. This is not bad, actually. Now, I'm going to propose a third approach that's even better, that I think is even better for a couple different reasons. And again, it's a bit of a design trade-off. So the better approach is the key doesn't exist at all. How about that? What if the key does not exist at all? What if the key is never reconstructed in any single place, but rather is able to sign collaboratively, meaning that you have you can take some primitives from some cryptographic primitives, you split the key up between, say, the sovereign share or the individual and a server, and you're able to generate signatures on the fly. So there's a couple reasons why you would want to do this. First off, keeping the key local limits you to, say, unless you're running your own RPC on localhost as well, you're going to be, potentially, you might be potentially vulnerable for, say, Oracle attacks, right? If there's some slight difference between, or if things come out of sync between what's happening on chain and the state that you've defined on local, you can end up with an Oracle mismatch, right? So your transaction might revert, or worst case scenario, man-in-the-middle attack, or something else, right? So yeah, there's a couple problems with that, and being able to do these things, I think, live in production, I think, is really important. So that's 2PC. 2PC is literally MPC, but instead of multi, it's two people or two entities that are interacting. On one side, you have the client, where you can derive your key share from anything, really. Like, it could be, for example, it could be like, if you wanted like a face scan, right? You could have something tied to your biometrics if you want to get fancy. Or if you just want to keep it simple, you could do, say, like a phone number sign up or an email sign up. You OPRF it, add some entropy to it, and now you have a really strong key. Now, the problem with that, though, and the problem with most seed phrase-based private key solutions, is that if you lose the device, you lose access to the key. If you get malware on the device, you lose control of the key, and the assets are zeroed out and you're wrecked. So starting from this primitive, why not then have a second key share? The second key share can then exist in another client, like a server. It could be an enclave. It could be a network. It could potentially be a network, like a threshold network like LIT or ICA. And when you want to actually perform a transaction, you take these two keys and you effectively multiply them together on the fly to generate the signature. Having it in the server is really powerful because now you can have runtime policies on the enclave or the network. For example, you can set all of these different guardrails in place. You can have them adaptive, right, with real-time information. The policy itself can be an agent that lives within the network or the enclave. And then you can spin multiple versions of these up, right? You can, you're not tied to one production setup for this type of architecture. So this is the way forward. And in our mind, we think that to really see autonomous software really reap the benefits of what's possible, we need to have effective secrets management. And the most elegant solution that we've been able to find over the past 2 years of working on this problem is this 2PC architecture. So yeah, okay, so well, what happens then? All right, if we adopt this 2PC architecture, what kind of automations can we see? The idea here is that this stuff is happening really fast. So within the next year, you might actually, instead of opening up MetaMask and then connecting to Aave and then loading up your safe multi-sig and then drinking your coffee and getting ready for the onslaught of 20 approvals and transactions that you have to sign and execute and confirm, you open up a natural language prompt. You open up your natural language prompt. You say, hey, good morning, Claude. It's a great day to rebalance my Aave portfolio. I want to get the best yield because it looks like the collateral has changed. So how about this? You can swap up to $500 of my balance in Aave, and I don't want you to spend more than $10 in gas fees. And then you have a 5-minute permission token that lets you execute this string of transactions. So effectively what you're doing is in a single prompt, you're producing a signature with guardrails that lets you execute a very complicated set of transactions or intents with one single keystroke, right? Or a couple keystrokes. So this is kind of the future we see, I think, at least in the immediate term, where a lot of the wallet interfaces just starts dissolving into the background. It becomes pure infrastructure, and the UI becomes something a little bit different. It's possible that there might be even further disruptions. I don't think this is the end-all be-all for how we think about the future of front-end for consumer-facing applications. I think now that the cost of software is coming down to zero, it's very possible that front ends might be constructed on the fly for customer segments to create personalized experiences that are tied to perhaps their preferences, their history, or whatever profile they might have with the service they're interacting with. And in that case, it's yeah, that's kind of mind-blowing if you start thinking about the consequences of that. So yes, so 2PC is live today for builders to interact with and start messing around and trying it out with for all you OpenClaw users. It's WAP for agents, or agentic WAP. It's super easy to use. We're looking at creating an SDK as well if the need is there for that, but you just do an npm import of the package. You create a wallet for your agents by creating a password. And and then you can set policies. You can tell it exactly what it can or can't do. You can set up 2FA so that you receive a telegram or signal message whenever you want to be included in the loop or when you run up against the guardrails. And then the cool thing is there is a front-end application you can go to and then log into the wallet. So for example, if you wanted to set up a wallet for your Aave rebalancing, you could say, Shady plus agent@gmail.com. And then you create the wallet for the agent, and then you go to wap.xyz, have it run off, and then you can actually watch the balance and the transactions appear in runtime, in real time. So you can kind of sit in front of it and watch the wallet do its thing, and even intervene or update the policies, or even like submit asynchronous transactions at the same time. So it's kind of fun to see what you can do with that. Let's see. I guess the other important thing here is that the wallet is chain agnostic. So 2PC, the cool thing about it is you can produce these signatures on any elliptic curve. Doesn't really matter what chain you're working with. It can be supported. Just reach out if there's something that you need that we don't currently support. Yeah. So this is what we do, right? We're really concerned with where autonomous software is going today. I think there's not enough thought being given what happens when we really abstract humans away so far, and the kind of consequences that emerge from that. So human.tech, really, it's just an infrastructure for keeping these humans in the loop. And we do that in 2 ways. If you're familiar with Gitcoin Passport, that's us. To keep the humans in the loop, you need to identify who the humans are. So we do proof of personhood. We have something like 2.5 million users, 50 million credentials have been created, specifically just for proof of personhood. Been doing this since 2022, protecting quadratic funding rounds, and a bunch of other stuff, right? And the other missing component that we felt we had to, I think that we felt really uniquely positioned to put out there is this 2PC architecture. So being able to give humans control, right? Identify the humans, then give them the ability to exert control and protect their authority over the autonomous software that acts on their behalf. And that's what Wallet as a protocol was built for. So yeah, what more is there to be said? If you're working on any project in the hackathon, we have a booth. We'll be here all day. Even if maybe you don't finish your project today, come get our contact information. We're happy to work together with you. We're actively building out recipes for different types of use cases, for automated prediction markets, for there's one fun one where it's like a jukebox where you can pay an agent in crypto to ask it to play a certain song. Or yeah, if you're working on something fun, come stop by. I would love to hear what you're thinking about. And yeah, there's a lot of unsolved problems here as well. It's a very, still I think underspecified problem space. The agentic space is just beginning. And if we believe kind of the trend and the momentum that's picking up, maybe by the end of the year, some of the crazy ones are like 90% of crypto transactions are all going to be agent-based first. Humans are going to start forming very, very, very little of the transaction volume. So yeah, if you're building along these lines, let us know. And that concludes my spiel for today. Thank you so much.